In our Haftarah, we hear that our shame will be ended and we will step into an eternity of love. Isaiah proclaims these divine words: "Do not be ashamed, for a small moment have I forsaken thee, but with great compassion will I gather thee. In a little wrath I hid my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting kindness will I have compassion on thee." We might most simplistically understand these verses to tell us that historically, the period of our dejection will be shorter than our acceptance or redemption. Yet, is there also a lesson about how time feels in either state, in shame or in love? I have long wondered about the implications of a similar verse in the daily morning psalm, Psalm 30, a strikingly personal psalm, which declares, "Rega ba'apo, chayim birtsono," a moment in your anger, but a lifetime in your desire. I may go to sleep crying, but I awaken to joy. What does this mean? A moment in your anger, but a life in your desire. What can we learn from this sharp end to shame, apparently just an instant, and then this step into everlasting love? Leah and I have just returned from 2 weeks of break in Kansas City. We spent time with Leah's parents in the home she grew up in, and with Leah's grandma, who is essentially receiving end-of-life care from her daughter and professionals in that home. Leah's grandma, Paula, is a formidable, bright, colourful, loving woman who is very aware of her decline. She talked about giving up months ago, but family visits and care have at times given her a lease of life. She is still formidable enough to repeatedly declare, "I just want to live long enough to see that man leave the White House." In fact, she is still formidable enough that I had to heavily paraphrase what she actually says in that sentence. But in her decline, her other most repeated sentences include, "What's next? What am I waiting for? Always the same old junk on TV. I'm in such a fog. And occasionally, I'm sorry." Whenever I walked past her in her house, not sure of exactly how she's doing, I might catch her eye, but I was sometimes concerned, especially early on in the visit, that what I would glimpse in her eyes would be shame, though perhaps that perception was coming entirely from behind my own eyes. Leah would sometimes joke that many of her grandma's repeated phrases were just versions of what we're all feeling during these strange, protracted months. What's next? What am I waiting for? Always the same old junk on TV. And indeed, even, I'm sorry, we find ourselves with minimal distraction, so often focused on simply managing time, accumulating tasks, and then guilt or even shame for what we haven't gotten to, or perhaps just for who we are. I have begun to understand better that verse, "Rega ba'apo, chayim birtsono," a moment in your anger, a life in your desire, by reading an essay that Zadie Smith wrote over lockdown called "Something to Do." She identifies in her words how conflicted we feel about this new liberty and/or captivity. She writes that like pugs who have been lifted out of a body of water. Our little limbs keep pumping on, as they did when we were hurrying to our workplaces. We make banana bread, we sew dresses, we go for a run, we complete all the levels of Minecraft. We do something, then photograph that something, and not infrequently put it online. Reactions are mixed, even in our own hearts. Then Zadie Smith, really getting to the heart of the problem of managing time and our lives during these times, writes, "You carve it out the time you need, after much anxiety and debate, and you get into a separate space and look between your hands, and there it is, nothing, an empty victory." And as a solution to the problem of time, she explains the following. "I once read this line about love. Without it, life is just doing time. And I don't think this means only romantic love, or parental love, or familial love, or really any kind of love in particular, but the Platonic sense, love with a capital L, an ideal form, an essential part of the universe, like beauty or the color red, from which all particular examples on earth take their nature. Without this element present in some form somewhere in our lives, there really is only time, and there will always be too much of it. Busyness will not disguise its lack. Even if you're working from home, every moment God gives, even if you don't have a minute to spare, still all of that time without love will feel empty and endless. So, a moment of anger, a life in desire or love. Forget your shame, which must indeed come to an end of punishing yourself. Permit yourself constructive reproach for a moment, and then, if you cannot do anything about it, know that you have nothing to be ashamed of. Forget your shame, for in a little wrath, we are told, I hid my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting compassion will I have kindness upon thee. Time is different with love and compassion and desire. We know this love with a capital L and some of its particular examples. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your being, your substance, we say in the Shema. Love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Love your neighbor as yourself, which we might perceive as two commands. Love yourself and love your neighbor. This is the beyond romantic love that our Judaism can enable us to bring to our everyday. As Zadie Smith teaches us, we might then cease to just pass the time and instead pierce time with meaning, with love. We know that love with a capital L. So let us turn unto it. Look upon the world with love. Inculcate a consciousness of love. Each day, do something with care, with love. Each day, do something you love. Pace your day with the Shema's love poetry as much as the clock. Look upon a person with love, not with shame, putting at the heart of your life meticulous loving care. Of course, with Leah's grandma, when she looks upon others, or when others look upon her, what is really being said is what was actually said out loud several times. I love you. I love. Shabbat Shalom.